All right, y'all, clock out mentally and pull up a chair. Welcome to the broken shift, where the codes are emotional, the tea is hot, and the trauma, oh, it's charted, just not processed. In most hospitals, the break room is supposed to be your only safe space, a sanctuary, a moment to breathe. But what happens when violence finds its way there too?
In July 2023, nurse Brad Rathke of Virginia Mason Medical Center in Seattle was stabbed in the jaw with a metal butter knife by a patient. The attack was sudden, violent, and absolutely preventable.
Less than a year before that, Allison Smith, a fellow nurse at the same hospital, was punched in the face by a patient. Different day, different unit, same institution.
This isn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern, and we're going to break it down in 6 parts. The attacks, the aftermath, the silence, the system failure, the emotional toll, and the path to accountability.
2 different nurses, same hospital, same problem, and one big question. Where was the breakdown?
This is the broken shift, and we're not pulling punches today.
Let's walk through it. July 2023, Seattle, Washington. Brad Rathke, a seasoned nurse at Virginia Mason, was performing routine care on a patient. Nothing high risk, no code, no warning signs, until there were.
That patient, who had a documented history of aggression, grabbed a metal butter knife and stabbed Brad in the jaw. Let that sink in. This wasn't a surgical instrument. This wasn't a weapon brought in from the outside. This was a piece of hospital-issued cutlery on a meal tray.
We've worked bedside. You know how those trays get handed out. You know what's on them. Plastic forks, sometimes, but in some facilities, stainless steel, sharp enough to cut or stab.
Brad was rushed to surgery. He survived. But the wound? That goes deeper than skin. He said afterward, and I quote, "I was trying to care for a human being. I didn't expect to be assaulted for doing my job."
Now let's rewind a little. 9 months earlier, same hospital. Another nurse, Allison Smith, is walking into a patient room. The patient becomes verbally abusive, then physical. She's punched in the face.
No warning, no flag on the chart, no security backup in the hallway.
Both of these nurses were assaulted while doing the work they were trained, licensed, and committed to do. And yet, neither case made national headlines. Neither case led to a facility-wide overhaul.
Why? Because violence in healthcare has become expected.
But not today. Today, we name it, we hold it, we put it in the spotlight.
Coming up in part 2, the aftermath. What happens after a nurse is assaulted?
Let's talk about what happened next. Brad survives the stabbing. He's rushed to surgery. His coworkers are shaken. The unit is in shock. For a day, maybe 2, there's chatter. A few administrators make an appearance. HR follows up. An incident report is filed. Then silence.
Brad returns to work, eventually, but with a scar. Not just on his face, but on his trust. Did leadership change the way they screen patients? No. Did they switch from metal to plastic utensils? Not immediately. Did they bring in trauma counselors for staff? Temporary. Optional.
What Brad got was a brief pause in his shift schedule and a sense that he had become a liability instead of a hero.
Now let's talk about Allison. She gets punched in the face, violently, swelling, bruising. She reports it, but instead of support, she gets skepticism. Was she provoking the patient? Did she follow protocol? What exactly was said in the room?
It's what so many of us know too well, the unspoken question, what did you do to cause this?
After her attack, Allison says she felt more isolated than injured. No community debrief, no long-term support plan, just a form, a follow-up email, and the vague expectation that she should return to her assignment as if nothing happened.
These are not isolated oversights, they're systemic avoidance strategies. Because to acknowledge what happened to Brad and Allison would be to admit that violence isn't the exception, it's embedded.
In part 3, we talk about the silence, how hospitals mute the trauma, avoid accountability, and ask nurses to swallow it for the sake of professionalism.
Let's talk about the silence. Because what happens after violence in hospitals is not just physical, it's cultural, it's systemic, it's packaged under one word we've all heard before, professionalism.
You don't cry in the hallway. You don't scream in frustration. You don't talk to the media. You don't even talk to each other.
You clock back in. You smile. You move on because anything else is seen as weakness, drama, or being too emotional to function.
Brad got told, "We're looking into it." Allison got asked if she'd done everything she could to de-escalate. Neither of them got a system-wide announcement. Neither of them got a memo to all staff that said, "We won't stand for this."
And that's what hurts most. Not just the punch, not just the stab. It's the erasure. The way you're expected to act like your trauma is a shift note temporary, recyclable.
And let's be real, silence doesn't protect nurses. It protects institutions.
Because if you speak out, you become the risk. You disrupt the brand. You're labeled uncooperative, difficult, a liability.
But here's the truth. Silence isn't neutral. It's complicit.
In part 4, we expose how the system's structural cracks make this violence predictable. And worse,
Permissible. Let's talk about the cracks. Not the ones you trip over. The ones you're expected to step around quietly. The ones baked into the walls of the system.
cracks like these, aggressive patients without behavioral flags, metal utensils in psych-sensitive units, short staff shifts that leave nurses isolated in dangerous rooms.
Let's be honest, there's no standardization for flagging violent patients. One facility's high risk is another's mild concern. And even when someone is flagged, that flag doesn't always make it to the assignment sheet, the handoff, or the hallway.
Brad's attacker had a documented history, but where was that info when he entered the room? Where was the plan for safety? Who briefed security?
Allison's assailant had been verbally aggressive to others before, but that didn't trigger a team review. It didn't prompt buddy assignments or security support.
And that's what we mean by permissible violence. When systems don't proactively protect their staff, they are silently endorsing harm.
Because silence is a choice, and inaction is a policy.
In part 5, we explore what happens to nurses emotionally when that system failure becomes personal, when your safety becomes negotiable.
Because it's not just bruises, it's trust, it's fear, it's the wound of realizing they won't protect me.
Let's talk about what doesn't show up in the chart. What happens when the violence isn't just a headline, but a memory your nervous system won't let go of?
Brad goes back to work. He smiles. He jokes with patients. But when someone moves too fast, his body flinches. When he hears metal hit porcelain, he tenses. That's trauma.
Allison says she felt her entire sense of safety vanish. The call bells started sounding like alarms. She double-checked every patient room before walking in. Her gut said, "Be ready to run."
This is what we mean when we say the injury goes beyond the body. It's psychological, emotional, existential.
Nat, because if you're not safe doing your job, then who are you in that space? Are you a nurse or a target with a badge?
And the truth is, most hospitals don't know what to do with that kind of pain. They're not built to hold it, so they don't. So nurses bury it deep until the next code, the next threat, the next panic attack that no one sees because we're still charting. And this is where burnout becomes something deeper, not just exhaustion, but moral injury.
In part 6, we close out with a vision for what accountability actually looks like, what it means to honor the pain, protect the profession, and rewrite the script on safety.
Because the system may be broken, but nurses, we're still standing.
So how do we move forward? What does accountability actually look like in a system that's gotten used to violence?
It starts with naming it out loud, on the record. No more brushing it off as part of the job.
Then it means creating protocols that don't just react to violence, but prevent it. Behavioral flagging that's actually used. Security that's visible. Buddy assignments when risk is present. Trauma-informed debriefs as standard practice, not optional supports.
It's giving nurses the legal and professional backing to say no. No, I will not walk into that room alone. No, I will not downplay this incident. No, I will not pretend this didn't shake me.
And it's on leadership to stop using the word unfortunate and start using the word unacceptable.
Real accountability also means transparency. Nurses should know what happens after a violent event. Was the patient removed? Was a report filed? Was anything changed?
Because silence doesn't build safety, it builds resentment, it builds fear, and eventually it builds exits.
We're losing good nurses not because they can't do the job, but because they can't keep paying the price of being disposable.
Brad and Allison didn't deserve what happened to them, but what they do deserve is for their stories to be heard, to lead to change, to never be
forgotten. This episode is for every nurse who's ever walked into a room afraid and stayed anyway.
Next week, we confront the unthinkable when the threat isn't the patient, but the person wearing the badge.
We're talking about what happens when neglect or abuse comes from the caregiver, and how all roads lead back to chronic understaffing and broken systems.
Because while abuse is a crime, when you pay to put your loved one in a facility that promises care but delivers trauma, you have to ask, was the system complicit? We'll dig into what the research says about understaffing, oversight, and whether the system itself enables harm. It's heavy, it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary.
Until then, follow @TheBedsideRebel. Share this episode. And if you've ever been hurt at work, physically, emotionally, or both, your story matters. Tell it, even if you have to whisper, even if you write it in a notebook you never show anyone. Your truth deserves light. This is The Broken Shift.
This is The Broken Shift, where we believe nursing shouldn't break you.